about that, we're working with ChargePoint. We're looking at actually several sites around the county. We have 6 schools that we're targeting for level 2 charging stations, and then 3 county facilities. One of them being Midlothian Library, and the other being the county complex here. And with the idea of being able to make it available to the public, where they would pay for, just like what you would do at any particular charging station, set up a billing service to handle that. But also it puts us in a position where when we start to expand our fleet, our county fleet with electric vehicles, we'll have the infrastructure where we'll be able to handle a dual role, internal and external customers for that. So we're very excited about that. And as we continue to grow that program, looking at our newer facilities as they come on board, new schools, new libraries, new facility constructions. We're looking at additional locations where we can place charging stations. We're also looking at our 2 park and ride lots. We have one at Fulgham, which is off of Chippenham Parkway, and then we have one at on Hull Street, near the Career Technical Center on Hull Street. So we have 2 park and rides where we're going to put EV charging stations as well. So extremely excited about that. But we also have in our county fleet, we have 4 EV buses that we obtained about 5 or 6 years ago through a program with Dominion Energy. So we have those. Those are producing great results for us. So much so that we won a Green Fleet Award from the Fleet Administration, one of the National Fleet Administration Associations, recognizing us for our efforts, not only with the EV buses, but also with alternative fuels in our fleet program. So we're trying to be great environmental stewards and keeping that momentum going by venturing into our EV charging with ChargePoint.
Great. So, and you can see that there's a map that I managed to find that didn't have other stuff on it, that shows the different, I guess, subdivisions or sections of Chesterfield County.
So
So
yeah, those are our 5 magisterial districts.
right,
Each board of supervisor represents each one of those.
right. So how would you distribute those chargers in these 4, like roughly? Um,
Um, so we're looking a couple in the Dale district. We have some new school construction in the Midlothian, Clover Hill, and Matoaka districts, and we have a new library planned for the Bermuda district that would be a candidate for EV charging stations. So that we're purposely making sure that they are spread throughout the county. And it typically aligns with our new construction new construction opportunities.
Thank you for that, because I mean I live in the county and I don't know, like I know Midlothian the best and then some other parts there, so I thought that might be helpful for those who be are attending this or also might be watching this later on YouTube or
And I'll add also, I failed to mention, it's not part of our official charging program, but we do have a county airport. And at the airport, we've received a couple of inquiries about, EV charging for planes, and so we're looking into that option as well, kind of separate from what we're going to do with ChargePoint. But I think there's some great opportunities for us with our airport partnering with EV. They're called EV tolls, electric vehicle takeoff and landing. So we have a great opportunity there at the airport where there's interest been expressed about that.
oh, that's exciting to hear. And there's I know there's at least one company in Virginia that's working on those kinds of like electric or hybrid electric airplanes. So that's exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about the sort of motivation, like why you decided to kind of to go to venture into building the some public infrastructure for EV charging?
Well, we see that it's a great opportunity. We have a pretty strong environmental sustainability program in the county, and we just see it as the next step. So it's a natural next step for continuing to support that program, whether it's through recycling efforts, alternative fuels, The EV charging. It's just the natural next step. And we also are heavily involved in solar panels on our county facilities. So, all of that makes up that sustainability realm, and we just see it as a natural progression for our next step.
So I know to play devil's advocate, it's like, so, some people might say, well, you have companies like Tesla and ChargePoint you mentioned is coming up. Your guys are working with EVgo, Electrify America, and they're building charging stations, it seems, at an increasing rate. So why should Chesterfield County get into the business of doing that?
Well, part of it is with our High Performance Building Act that was passed in General Assembly a few years ago. As we're building our new buildings and renovating those larger facilities, there's that component in there that talks about sustainability programs, and installing EV charging stations is one of the options that we have available to us. So it just, again, it's a natural fit for us to be able to do that, so that if you're going to a library and you're going to be there for 2 or 3 hours, there's an opportunity for you to charge. We are being strategic about it and making sure that those charging stations are not necessarily available 24 hours a day. We want to align it up with our normal business hours of business operation.
I think that's a logical approach to take because, obviously we have government has a role to play in terms of sort of stepping in where the private sector, for whatever reason, is not stepping forward. And so there's, the opportunities to sort of fill the gaps in. So it's great to see that the infrastructure is going to be spread out throughout the county. So that sort of spread that one of the concerns that keeps being brought about the transition to electrification is to make sure that nobody gets left behind in that transition. So I think, public infrastructure, charging infrastructure has a role to play in that. So it's great to hear about that. I'm going to hold other questions until we have our second speaker, and then we'll have questions for both because there may be overlap between the two. Last year we had Henrico County, Samantha Hudson come and tell us about Henrico's efforts to build EV infrastructure as part of the community, the CFI program, the Community Fueling Initiative, which is part of the IRA program. And so obviously, with the reconciliation budget that was passed and other changes that have taken place in policy since then, I thought it would be a good opportunity to have Samantha come back and give us an update and see where things are at. So I'll turn the floor over to you.
Great, thank you, Charles. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Hudson. I'm the Sustainability Division Director for Henrico County. A lot has happened since I was here presenting to y'all a year ago with us kicking off our CFI grant project. So our project overall, the scope, we were awarded $1.4 million through the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant Program. And the county was also, or is also, contributing a 20% match. So that comes to a little over $350,000. As part of our scope, we were really emphasizing, and we really are emphasizing, distribution of the charging stations across the county, and in particular in areas that we had identified as being underserved or that have lower potential to actually be served by the private sector when it comes to charging stations. And so that continues to be a major focus of our entire EV charging station program. And so with the grant, we will be installing 38 charging stations total, and that's 36 level 2 and then 2 DC fast chargers. And those would be distributed across 7 facilities across the county. So we kicked off the grant really in earnest about this time last year. And we were moving at quite a clip through the fall. We completed our National Environmental Policy Act, our NEPA review at the end of December or into the first week of January. And that was quite a lift for us. A lot of the federal requirements for assessing the environmental impacts were completed through that. And we're very, very excited to get over that hurdle. And also in the meantime, during the fall, we selected a design consultant. We selected an operator. So we are actually working with Dominion Energy Solutions for our charging network. And our consultant is Mosley. And so we also conducted quite a few site visits with the Dominion infrastructure folks. So we did assessments of the infrastructure at all 7 locations and refined our siting for all of the locations as well. And we, as we were doing all of that due diligence, of course, there were a lot of changes that occurred at the federal level, and that has certainly it slowed us down quite a bit. So we had our obligation trigger for the full scope of the funds was completion of the environmental review. So we met that milestone, and then we waited about 3 months for an action from the Federal Highway Administration. During that time, we had a change in our project contact at the local Federal Highways Administration office. And so that, of course, a handoff of a project at this scope took some time. And at the point at which we've kind of gotten the new project manager up to speed, or we're getting to work with her more. But now we've had a changeover in the headquarters Federal Highway Administration point of contact who we have been working with. So there's been quite a bit of changes with the personnel. We also, through all of our due diligence, we determined that we had initially underestimated the scope of what would be needed in terms of Americans with Disability Act improvements. And so we throughout the spring, while we have been in a holding pattern, we have been also reviewing the sites and determining what we would be able to do with the grant funds. And it is certainly fewer of the locations, fewer of the charging stations. And so we have, I guess, revised our scope. However, it hasn't been formally approved by FHWA. And so we're waiting for that approval from FHWA headquarters at this point. And with all of those changes, just in the last month, we have been recalibrating and adjusting our strategy with really with an expectation that the CFI grant project is going to move significantly slower. And so we are talking with Dominion Energy Solutions and looking at ways that we can start deploying charging stations at other locations. And so we have started, actually we're doing an assessment for our Western Government Center for level 2 charging stations there. And so that was not originally part of the CFI grant. So we're clear to work on essentially any other charging station that wasn't originally included in the grant program. So I would say I wish that I had more promising news to say, at least on the grant front. I will say that there is absolutely reason for optimism, though, with just the fact that Henrico County, we are pivoting so that we can fill this need in the county. It certainly was unexpected, but I think that we're coming up with a good path forward for it. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving us it's a very detailed review. I just had two quick points of clarification. So at this point, so it seems like at this point, the original commitment of the what 1 point whatever million dollars, is that still the case, or did that number change, or is that money actually in your bank, or is that any questions to whether or not that's coming?
So there are, at this point, no questions as to whether that full amount is coming to Henrico. So all of the funds have been fully obligated. So they're available to us. We also learned in the last month that those funds will not expire. So, which really depending on how things work out, I think, with the administration policies and how we move forward with implementation, that could be a very helpful thing that will have that 1.4 million available to us. So,
Gotcha. And I guess my other question, and this actually really is a question for both of you and John, 'cause just at the face of it, it seems like maybe in some respect, while obviously having $1 million from the federal government is useful, I wonder though if it's, and I guess having gone through that years of progress, and then John, I mean, you going through this evaluation process, does it seem to be easier just for the county to fund this stuff itself versus trying to get federal dollars? Because it seems like it just kind of, when you start involving the federal government, definitely adds some additional layers that you have to kind of work through.
Now, I'll start out just saying, on the surface, yes, it is, but if you do have the opportunity to take advantage of the federal funds, certainly worthwhile, even though there is more effort, just being able to diversify your resources. Um, you know, most localities are working on a limited budget, limited amount of dollars. So anytime we can take advantage of being able to support that with outside resources, it makes our dollars go farther.
and I'll say I 100% agree with John on that. Um, However, having gone through this past year of working on the CFI grant in particular, it's been a bit of night and day. Daytime during the entire fall, we were really rocking and rolling. That's how I would describe it. But with the change at the federal level, all of the changes, it has really been a little bit of whiplash. And so with what I've learned over the last year when it comes to EV charging stations, there's so much opportunity for us to proceed with installing these, just the different business models that we've seen out there, or that I've learned about. So I think that if anything, we have learned quite a bit over the last year, and I think that that definitely better positions Henrico to move forward with this.
And it sounds like based on what you're saying that even despite, I guess, the CFI funded program kind of going slower than expected, that I guess you'd seen those opportunities and are moving forward doing other projects to fill the need. So which is great news to hear that at least will be moving forward. But and just amplify John's point, definitely what the feedback I've gotten from other, like Charles, I talk with folks about doing charging like in Charleston County or in Northumberland County for in the Northern Neck region, and the number one question comes up was, yeah, this would be a great thing to do, but we've got our priorities from a budget perspective. So which is where I guess programs CFI was supposed to, I guess, be helpful, was to sort of step in and perhaps fill in gaps in infrastructure, maybe in rural communities or in communities that are underserved, that Henrico is focused on. So, so but obviously provides money for localities to provide that infrastructure that otherwise would not have been able to, which again goes towards, making EV technology more broadly available. So awesome. Well, I'll open the floor to any questions from other folks on the call for either John or Sam.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm also a Chesterfield County resident and live right beside Clover Hill High School. And I just charge from home. But I'm excited to hear about the opportunity for schools and, like you said, libraries also to have the charging capabilities for. And I'm assuming that would that be also for like office hours, like during school days for
Correct.
staff and faculty to be able to have those chargers
Correct.
available?
Correct.
I was
Mhm.
wondering, is it a possibility or a consideration for um, like special events, like for instance, football games or different performing arts events, things like that? Any kind of organizations that might rent school facility, for several hours to have that available as well, even if it's, in the evening.
We hadn't thought about that, but there's certainly, great feedback for us to consider as we're working towards getting these installed. So appreciate that feedback and definitely take that under advisement.
Just say that you mentioned ChargePoint, and I like ChargePoint. It's one of the apps that has not given me any problems. So that seems to work pretty well. So that's a good thing. So I have a question for Samantha. So as of not following real well, as you said, originally they wanted to do 38 charging stations, 36 of them being level 2. Are they still aiming for that number?
No, the number will be reduced, or it's proposed to be reduced. We are going to focus in specifically on 2 locations. So our sports and event center is the one location with the grant that we planned for DC fast chargers. And so we're still including that location really for that added capacity. And then the second location that we propose to continue including is the short pump park. And so it would reduce our number of charging stations, I believe, to somewhere in the 20s. But I would need to just look through my files to pull that specific number.
They would be public, that anybody could come up and use them.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll throw one out there real quick for both John or Sam. I was curious, like in the process of evaluating, like looking at sort of level 2 chargers versus fast chargers, was there any sort of thought process behind like the emphasizing, like in both cases, that the emphasis is on level 2, which I think is great. But was that sort of intentional to focus on level 2? And if so, like what was the reasoning behind that?
For us, it was just which one gives us the best charging time we anticipate someone, if they come to a library, they may be there 3 or 4 hours. Just kind of the use of the building and how long we anticipate them to be in there. Wouldn't necessarily want someone to be, charging for 6 or 8 hours. Particularly employees that would have access to it, and that would just reduce availability to the other customers. So, looking at it from that perspective, it's kind of why we landed on level 2.
And for us, one thing that we have certainly learned over the past year is just the amount of infrastructure and additional costs that comes with the DC fast chargers. That is absolutely something that we are factoring into our thinking about what charging stations we would put in what locations. So what we found is that the level 2 can be deployed much more quickly. And so that was a big part of our strategy initially with the CFI grant. And so I think that we'll continue to pursue kind of a mix where we're able to.